New York Post, ICE agents snatch anti-Israel Colombia protester Mohsen Madawi during his U.S. citizenship appointment. Immigration agents nabbed an anti-Israel Columbia University protester while he was at an appointment to obtain his U.S. citizenship in Vermont Monday. Good. Get him the fuck out of here. Palestinian student Mohsen Madawi, who hails from the West Bank, was detained as a U.S. citizen. Detained at a U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services office in Burlington after spending 10 years in the U.S. and obtaining his green card, according to Intercept. If it took you 10 years to get a fucking green card, you don't belong in this country anyways. It now appears, however, that the Trump administration is seeking to cut Madawi's time short in the U.S. after he helped lead anti-Israel protests on Columbia's Morningside Heights campus until last spring. Good. Get him the fuck out of here. I love this. Oh my God, I love this. Video footage posted on X Monday appeared to show Madawi being escorted with his hands shackled in front of him and surrounded by federal agents who placed him into an unmarked vehicle. It's kind of a death sentence, Madawi, who previously led Colombia's Palestinian Student Union, said according to The Intercept. Stop letting the press speak to these people. They have no business speaking to these people, and all they're trying to do is basically make martyrs of these individuals because my people are being killed unjustly in an indiscriminate way. We've already broken down the math here between the numbers claimed by Hamas and the rest of the world, and it's completely false. Probability dictates, and probability has a deviation, right? But more or less within that probability, it's pretty fucking accurate, right? His people aren't being killed unjustly or indiscriminately, okay? The indiscriminate way, we literally proved through probability, is false. Unjustly, are you kidding me? October 7th, 2023? If the Israelis, if there was peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis right now, right? Say this war never happened, but say on October 7th, 2023, say there was no war in Palestine right now, okay? October 7th, 2023, say it was Israel that went into Gaza and just murdered 1,200 Palestinians and took 250 hostages. Then everyone would say that it would be just for Palestine to start attacking Israel. So why isn't it just for Israel to attack Palestine? It is just. It is just. And we already broke down the math, the fact that the Palestinian Authority, which declare the Gaza Health Ministry, which declares how many Palestinians have died, right? And that's not just in Gaza, that's between Gaza and the West Bank. Okay? They have said that in a year and 7 months, okay? Almost a year and 7 months, that almost 51,000 Palestinians have died in a year and a half time frame. They don't list why. They don't say that they're not saying that they're trying to declare that all 51,000 of those Palestinians have died because of a war. There are no other records of any other Palestinians dying. So I guess no, not even a single other Palestinian has died, right? Because of anything other than the war. It's kind of like COVID. It's the same thing they did with COVID. You get shot in the head, but you have COVID, you died because of COVID. Hamas is actually reporting very accurate numbers for what is considered the average mortality rate of the Palestinian people. Okay? And I'm only bringing this up, Yan, because you're new here and you haven't seen it. But I broke down the math. Egypt, right? The country in which my wife comes from. Give me 1 second. I'll respond to your comments right after I finish what I'm saying. Egypt, right? They are an Arab Muslim nation. It's the country my wife comes from. Jordan, they are an Arab Muslim nation. The queen of Jordan is also Palestinian, right? Jordan has an average annual mortality rate of 4 Jordanians die out of every 1,000. Okay? Egypt has a 6.9 out of every 1,000 for Egyptians. Okay? Now, Egypt has access to much more food than Jordan and much more food than Palestine. Egypt has more of a privatized healthcare system, and Jordan has a socialized healthcare system. Okay? So the reason that Egypt more than likely has a higher mortality rate than Jordan, because they're by effectively 3, right? Is because they suffer from more illnesses related to obesity and stuff like that because they have more food than Jordan. Okay? So Here's what I decided. I decided based off of probability, because nowhere you can you literally cannot find any credible sources that confirm information out of Palestine regarding health statistics or anything like that. So I used two Arab Muslim nations that are in very close proximity to Palestine, and they're ethnically and religiously similar to the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people are Arab Muslims as well. So I said, okay, well, the Palestinians don't have all of the same kind of shit as Jordan or Egypt. So let's just be safe, and let's say that they have an on average mortality rate of 5.5, because 5.5 is in between 6.9 and 4.0, right? If you do the math in comparison to their entire population, which is 6 million, right? Estimated to be 6 million, you divide that by 1,000, you have 6,000 groups. Okay, you then multiply 6,000 by 5.5, then you divide it by 2, and then add that half back to the total number, because it's been a year and a half. Because the original number you'll get will be the total population of what would be considered the average mortality rate of Palestinians, which is outside of war, right? So like if they're not at war, this is what you would have as many Palestinians die in this year, okay? Now, if you take that mortality rate in which I proposed, okay, and I didn't just come up with the number to match the data in which Hamas is providing. I told you 6.9 from Egypt and 4.0 from Jordan. And that's reported on from the Egyptian government and from the Jordanian government, right? Those are it's their sources, okay? So 5.5 is in the middle, because Palestine doesn't have as much access to food as Egypt, and they don't have a robust, comprehensive, sophisticated, socialized medical system like Jordan, right? So we could say that they're probably healthier than Egyptians on average, but they can't get the medical treatment they need for everything. So 5.5, right? That's me being fair. Okay? And I don't have my calculator activated on OBS right now. But you have 5.5 and you multiply it by 6,000, okay? You have 33,000. You then divide it by 2 and you have 16,500. So then you add 33,000 back to that, because the conflict has been going on for a year and a half, and you have 49,500. That would be the average mortality rate of Palestinians for a year and a half time frame. That's how many of them would die outside of war. CIA World Factbook has them at 2.1 million as of 2024. That's just in the West Bank. I mean, not the West Bank. That's just them in Gaza alone. That's not the entire Palestinian population between Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But the Gaza Health Ministry doesn't only report on Palestinian deaths out of Gaza. They report on Palestinian deaths across all of what they consider the Palestinian people, right? So 49,500. Hamas says their number's at 51,000. So I'll give credit where credit's due. Hamas is an internationally recognized terrorist organization. It's recognized as such by like the European Union, South American countries, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, I think I already said the European Union. Russia and China also recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization, and Saudi Arabia and Egypt also recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. So as far as a terrorist organization can go, they're actually almost very accurate. They're probably accurate on reporting how many deaths have occurred in a year and a half time frame for the Palestinian people. Okay? Because they say 51,000 in a year and a half. The number I have right now is 49,500, which means based on probability, that's less than 2,000 have most likely died directly due to the war. Now, my wife brought up a good point. We can't know for sure. We can't know for sure, because it could have been a hospital full of all the people that were about to die, and Israel blew it up, so they're going to chalk it up to the war. Okay? So benefit of the doubt. But what I'm saying is the number they propose, the left and Hamas both try to assert that it's because of the war, and that's simply not true. The probability of a majority of the number of deaths they have reported being because of the war is not likely whatsoever. The majority of deaths that they report are naturally due to fucking natural causes, because it's on par with the average mortality rate of the Palestinian people. Okay? So I'm not arguing that 50, I'm not saying that 51,000 Palestinians haven't died in a year and a half. I'm saying 51,000 Palestinians haven't died because of the war in a year and a half. Okay. Um, See, I have a problem with this stuff because Trump won't always be in power. He is setting the precedent for the next president to do the same. They were already doing it, man. They were already doing it. This country has been doing it forever. We put the Japanese in fucking internment camps. We were deporting Italians and Germans out of the United States during World War II. The precedent already exists and always has been there. Okay? Just because a precedent can be set does not mean that you should not exercise power. Right? Because if the precedent is set, that doesn't mean that it's going to be enforced in a negative way, but executive branch sucking up more and more power. The executive branch isn't sucking up more and more power. The executive branch is exercising the power that it already has. Right? Like the Illegal Enemies Act that the left keeps citing that Trump is using to deport criminal gang members to El Salvador. That was passed by the Congress as a power for the executive branch. And now the Supreme Court stated, right? The Supreme Court technically sided and didn't side with Trump. They said that you can continue to deport illegal immigrants, but they have to have a hearing, which they already have hearings. When I was in jail last year, a majority of everyone I was in jail with were illegal immigrants, and I had to sit in the courtroom with like 20 of them while they were getting their hearing. I wasn't involved in any illegal immigration or anything like that, right? So could you please point out to me what you think is the executive branch sucking up more power? Because as it stands right now, there are 17, but Congress has to declare war. Congress hasn't declared war since World War II. It doesn't have to be wartime. It said it's during wartime and threats of invasion, in or like a national emergency. And guess what? Guess what? Joe Biden had to declare illegal immigration as a national emergency, but he did it quietly so that FEMA was able to appropriate funding to aid in efforts for illegal immigrants, like housing or resettlement or stuff like that. Because you can only access FEMA funds under national emergencies. So how they were getting funding out of FEMA legally, Joe Biden declared legal immigration to be a national emergency. That's what I'm saying. Bush Sr., Bush Jr., Clinton, Obama, Biden all crept on more power. I don't think they did. I don't think they did because we had FDR, right? Wait, it was FDR he was the 4-term president, right? Um, I think he got elected for a 4th, but he only served 3. Uh, or he didn't serve the full 4th term, if I remember correctly. Jesus. Um, First and second. Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah, because he died in office, right? Whatever, whatever. We all know that FDR served more than 2 terms, right? I get what you're claiming, right? Um, and I do agree with you because I do think you're actually you are correct with at least from Bush Jr. I technically I was born in 96, right? So I don't know anything about Clinton or Bush Sr., right? Basically, I start from Bush Jr., okay? In my understanding. Bush Jr. absolutely did you take more power, not just for the executive branch, but the entirety of the federal government under the Patriot Act, 100%. And Obama and Biden also exercised it, okay, as well. I don't think Trump is creating new powers to exert his control or his authority over the executive branch or the American people, right? Um and it would, to me, it's really hard to make that argument simply based on the fact that there are currently 17 nationwide injunctions levied against Donald Trump and his administration for the actions they've tried to take, right? So, do you have something a little more specific about what you mean by sucking up more power? Because, like, if you think about it, right, Trump is actually Trump is responsible for the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And people might they agree or disagree on the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but fundamentally, if you remove your emotions or your thoughts on Roe v. Wade, Trump actually reduced the power of the federal government and gave the power of abortion over the states. Trump, like predecessors, more and more executive actions. Yes, you are right on that, right? The executive orders are out of control. But at the same time, executive orders are a check on the legislative branch for the legislative branch not acting, right? That are not in the executive branch's lane. Can you point to one that's not within the executive branch, like within their scope? I'm just asking for one. Um, just because clearly we see things differently, so I don't perceive them. And I've also brought up multiple of his executive orders that people have tried to say are unconstitutional, and we brought up the constitutional sections that they try to say it violated, and it actually didn't violate them at all. Because if it did violate them, the Supreme Court would have immediately come down and fucking overturned it. Just any executive action which you can think of, or what you know that you think isn't within the scope of the executive branch. Because fundamentally, so here's what I will explain, right? You have the three branches of government. You have the judicial branch, you have the executive branch, and you have the legislative branch. Okay? The point of the legislative Doge Illegal Aliens Act, Doge isn't unconstitutional. Doge, he didn't create an agency. He renamed the United States Digital Service, which was created by Obama and was already funded by Congress. He just renamed it to Doge. And because it's an executive agency, he, as the chief executive, has the authority to direct them to do what they're doing. And actually, what they're doing right now was the original intent of the United States Digital Service. In the Illegal Aliens Act. Are you talking about the Enemies Act, or let me look it up. Are you talking about the Enemies Act? Congress holds the purse. The funds are already passed by Congress, but they froze that. Yes, Congress holds the purse. Congress holds the purse, right? Think about it this way. Let me point something out to you. In most Western relationships between a man and a woman, the man is supposed to be the one who has the money, and he just holds the wallet, but the woman is the one who spends it, right? And you could say that's kind of like a traditional mentality or something, but the same thing literally applies to our government. Congress appropriates funds. They are not they appropriate funds for the executive branch to utilize. It does not mean that the executive branch has to use that money. Right? So let me put it this way. Okay? Say today that Congress said we need to give $100 billion to Russia. Would you agree with that or not? Would you agree that if Congress right now said, okay, let me ask you something. Um, do you support you? Are you a do, so with the Ukraine Russia war? Do you support Ukraine? Do you support Russia? Are you against the war in general? What? Against war, isolationists, but us president had promised to protect. We should live up to the word. Um, okay, so you're against the war. Are you against Russia? Like, do you think that Russia is ideologically an adversary to the United States? I'm not trying to like get you or anything like that. Or say that you're bad. Okay, so if Congress right now said that they passed a budget saying we have to give $100 billion to Russia right now, do you agree with that? Or do you think Trump should not send that money to Russia? Exactly. You see what I'm saying? Congress has the authority to create the budget. They don't have the authority to spend the money. Does that make sense? Um let's see. Appropriations clause, right? Constitution.congress.gov. Um actually, let's also do Article 1, Section 8. Uh, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, right? The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States, which they're actually not, right? Okay? Nowhere in here does it give Congress the authority. Like, they come up with the budget, they determine how much we're going to tax people and stuff like that, but they can't force the executive branch to spend the money. Does that make sense? Like, they hand the executive branch $200, but the executive branch doesn't have to spend $200. I see your point, but I'm talking about in a general sense. I'm all about freedom. Freedoms are eroding more and more. But where do you think freedoms are eroding? I as an American citizen haven't lost a single freedom. My wife, as a legal immigrant who is now a US citizen, hasn't lost a freedom. I got put in jail because my freedom of speech was violated. And that was under Joe Biden. You know what hasn't happened to me since Trump took office? I haven't been put in jail. What speech is being eroded? And freedom of speech, um when people say freedom of speech, they think that that means all speech is free, but that's not true and it never has been, right? People you like do you know why there's labeling on forms of media like rated M or 13 plus or some shit like that? That's because the federal government has a history of limiting speech or expression and stuff like that in media consumed by other people and whatnot. Free, freedom of speech in its totality has never existed, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. For the most part, almost all speech should, but freedom of the press, he's attacking that. The universities and colleges being beholden to Trump. No, they're not. How is he attacking the press? He hasn't used the federal government to launch lawsuits against the press. He sued ABC personally. That was him personally. And that was for defamation against Trump. Is that not his right to sue a media company for defamation? This is what you need to understand about freedom of speech, right? You have the freedom to speak. You have the freedom to say whatever the fuck you want. You are not free of consequences because of your speech. Does that make sense? Like if you're calling on people to assassinate the president, right? You're like, you need to go do it, and this is how you do it. Do you think people should be allowed to do that? Right? The universities and colleges being beholden to Trump, they're not beholden to Trump. All he has literally told them is that you need to enforce US law on your campuses or the federal government is withdrawing its funding. And then they have a choice to either capitulate or not. Because guess what? Federal funding should only apply to people who follow the law. And why are private universities getting taxpayer money anyways? They shouldn't be. They shouldn't be getting taxpayer money at all. Because higher education is a choice. It's not a right, right? It's going to college is not a requirement forced by society, whereas your general education is. And that's why your general education is paid for by the government. And that's exactly why what is it? That's why there's truancy laws, right? People get in trouble, and people's parents get in trouble for kids being truant from school, which means they don't go to school or they're late very often to school because it's wasting the state or the federal government's money. That's the only reason. There's no truancy laws for somebody who's paying for a private school. You can't be taken to truancy court over that. You get what I'm saying? I'm sure you do. You seem intelligent. And I hope it helps you. Maybe you've given me a lot to think about. Got to go to sleep, work early tomorrow. I'll drop back in. Hey man, I hope to have you back, and I hope we could have more of a this discussion about a bunch of the stuff. I know you brought up some other stuff that we didn't touch on. But yeah, I hope to have you back, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for chatting the conversation. It's been great. I hope you have a good night, man, and stay safe out there. All right. All right. With that being said, everybody, I want to say thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for the support. I am Joseph Rose, the host of the Common Sense Pros and Cons podcast. And as you just witnessed, we had a conversation with a reasonable gentleman or gentlewoman. I'm not sure. I'm gonna say gentleman. Okay. Um, and see, no bad blood, nothing like that. We had disagreements. We conversed. It was awesome. And this is what I want to promote more of. So I hope to have some more of y'all in here. And as always, just remember truth, reality, and common sense. If you have one, you'll have all three. Thank you all so much. I'll catch you in the next stream.